Hello, this is Talking Europe on France 24. I'm Catherine Nicholson, and my guest today is the Europe Minister of Finland, the country of 5.5 million people that has been officially named as the world's happiest by the United Nations for the fourth year running. Tytti Tuppurainen, thank you very much for being our guest with us on the line from Helsinki. Hello.
Thank you so much for having me. It is indeed a great honor.
I'll just tell our viewers a little more about some news in Finland recently. It currently has one of the lowest rates of infection of COVID-19 in the European Union. It's above the EU average slightly for delivering the first doses of COVID-19 vaccines. And Finland is also seen as having particular strategic importance within the EU, thanks to its 1,300-kilometre land border with Russia, a state which is troubling many in Brussels and beyond, with its troop build-up along the Ukrainian border. Tytti Tuppurainen, that's where I'd like to start, if I may. Tensions rising greatly in that region between Ukraine and your great neighbour Russia. Over the past week, Russia has beefed up its military presence in Crimea, as well as close to its own border. It's announced military readiness checks. What do you think Moscow is trying to achieve here?
Well, it's not for me to speculate the motives of Kremlin and Russia. But what we can say as Finland and as part of the European Union is that the situation is highly alarming, and there's all the reasons to be concerned, and we are monitoring the situation very closely. And of course, we have to do our utmost in order to avoid the situation from escalating, and we have to use all our diplomatic powers in order to ease the situation. But it is obvious where the responsibility lies, and it's absolutely Russia's key responsibility to alleviate the situation. The situation is really alarming, and I think nobody is happy with the situation. Quite the contrary.
Angela Merkel has called on Russia to pull back those troops from close to the Ukrainian border. That was met with a somewhat defiant response from Moscow. Do you believe that the EU as a whole bloc should make a joint call on Russia to pull back those troops?
Well, first of all, the EU should always act as one towards Russia. We should stay united and act firm and act calm and united. We have to be consistent and persistent and speak with one voice. We cannot act weak. It would only show our weakness, and that's not what we want. So basically, the ceasefire that was agreed last July, it is still valid, and we should call the parties to respect the ceasefire. And again, I repeat, the key responsibility is Russia's responsibility, and we invite Russia and we really urge Russia to respect its obligation in the issue.
Another geopolitical issue, if I may, the EU's part in the Iran nuclear deal. There have been those talks in recent days aimed at reviving this deal. It was one big foreign policy achievement for the European Union that had been undermined by the United States pulling out. Do you believe that this deal can be revived?
Yes, it was unfortunate that the United States pulled out, but now there's new window of opportunity, and we should seize the moment. And I'm proud as a European that the European Union has a key coordination role in the Iran deal, and the negotiations in Vienna, they are promising, and we should keep the hopes high, because it would be of everybody's interest to revitalize this Iran deal, and hopefully the next few months will bring us a positive outcome of the negotiations in Vienna.
Now, staying on foreign policy, there's been one big, dominant and unexpected story in recent days. It's being called Sofagate. Our viewers will probably remember the recent visits by Presidents Ursula von der Leyen and Charles Michel to European Union presidents to President Erdogan in Turkey. Now, President von der Leyen was left without a seat during those discussions there. Much criticism, particularly of President Michel, Tytti Tuppurainen, for seemingly taking the one chair and leaving President von der Leyen sidelined. Is this, as many are suggesting, everyday sexism in action by those two men involved?
Well, it was a very unfortunate occasion, and it was twofold. First of all, it was a insult against European Union, because European Union always, when it appears with its institutions, it should be treated as a European Union. The Commission is obviously also a very important institution, and Ursula von der Leyen was part of the delegation, so that was one mistake. But the second mistake was the fact that Ursula von der Leyen happens to be a woman. And it seems to me that perhaps Turkey wanted to underline something. It wanted to message something that makes me very uncomfortable, taking into account that it was only recently that Turkey withdraw from the Istanbul Convention, which is a very important agreement which aims at eliminating violence against women. So I don't know if there's a connection. If there is, I'm really disappointed.
Well, let's talk about vaccine rollouts, coronavirus, and the big preoccupation, of course, for all EU countries at the moment. Finland, as I mentioned before, has delivered at least one vaccine dose to over 17% of its population, perhaps more as we speak, in fact. This puts your country quite high up on a so-called vaccinations league table, slightly above the EU average. What's gone right for Finland that other countries haven't been able to achieve? Why have you done so much better, so to speak?
That's a very good question. I don't know, perhaps because we are Finns. We are so loyal to our institutions, and our civil servants work so diligently. That's perhaps one answer to the situation. Well, we believe in our health sector, and we believe what our health experts say, and the will of the people to be vaccinated. It's extremely high. So people are anxious to get their own doses, and that's a good sign. And in a small country like Finland, having a big neighbor, it has taught us many lessons before. And the so-called security of supply is a very, characteristical thinking for Finland. So we want to be prepared, and getting vaccinated, it's one part of the package.
You mentioned there about security of supplies, this idea of strategic autonomy that's really been brought to the fore in the European Union through the pandemic for many things, not just vaccines. But it does seem, well, there's criticism at least from certain member states of the European Commission for how it's gone about procuring the vaccines, particularly the AstraZeneca jab, which has massively under-delivered on its contracted doses. Some, though, pointing the finger of blame at the Commission for how it negotiated those contracts. Considering that most EU member states have not met their vaccination targets in the first quarter, has the common European approach failed at this point?
I would not say that it's failed. I think the fundamental choice to do a joint European procurement, that was the right one. And it has secured, for instance, Finland's position, because we are a small country and the vaccine market is extremely complex and extremely difficult. But we've had quite many problems with pharmaceuticals companies, and they need to also do their share, their part of the agreement. And we want the deliveries, and we want them quickly and without any disruption. And that's what we are doing now. So the rollout needs to be processing faster than it has. But when you talk about the strategic autonomy, what it brings to my mind is that we have to always keep in mind that the sovereignty doesn't mean that Europe would be somehow, closed or protected in a way that we would isolate ourselves. What we call is that we need an open strategic autonomy. We need to be open to the world, to the international market and free trade. And this is particularly important when you talk about pharmaceuticals and vaccine, because the value chains, they are so complex that we cannot allow ourselves the luxury that Europe could cope alone, that we could do this alone. We need the world and we need the global market. And therefore, the strategic autonomy needs to be open to the world.
With that in mind, it sounds like perhaps you might not be completely in favour of this agreement to potentially block exports of vaccines in some cases. Is Finland hesitant about that idea?
Well, it requires a word of warning. We need to be cautious. We did support the idea of having a, export authorization scheme because it has provided us much needed transparency to the process and to the purchasing of the vaccines. But a export ban, that would be a very bad idea. Taking into account that the market is global and the value chains are very complex, as said before.
Just one other brief issue with the time we have left. A big COVID debate at the current point is about travel over the European summer. Your government's health ministry was said to be in favour of so-called vaccine passes or passports. But with the latest rise in cases in Finland and elsewhere, is this still a plan for Finland?
Well, we all want to see a summer when we can go back to normal and when we can travel again and be genuinely European and meet our friends and relatives abroad. But of course, we have to stay vigilant as well and need to use all the possible instruments that can help us to manage the situation. And this travel certificate, this corona certificate is one instrument that we should also utilize. Of course, taking into account that it cannot be discriminatory because there are lots of people who are not yet vaccinated who are, equally eager to travel. So there are many things to take into consideration, and the development is ongoing. And Finland certainly wants to see a digital travel corona certificate.
Thank you so much, Tytti Tuppurainen, Finland's Minister for European Affairs.
Thank you so much.
And thanks to you very much for watching. I hope you'll stay with us in just a few minutes, part 2 of the programme.